Virgin at 18, she was betrayed at the wedding and humiliated. But a millionaire showed up at the altar and changed everything. He took a ring in front of everyone and shocked the crowd. The millionaire's impulsive gesture saved her life. The reflection in the mirror showed a radiant young woman in her wedding dress. Emily, at 18 years old, was adjusting for the last time the delicate veil that her mother had worn at her own wedding. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged the flowers in her bouquet of white roses, a gift from her best friend, Natalie. The simple room in the house where she had grown up was full of memories and dreams. The yellowed walls kept the secrets of her adolescence, the posters of bands she loved so much, and now witnessed the most important moment of her life. Or so she believed. "You look beautiful, my daughter," said Mrs. Helen, her mother, entering the room with misty eyes. The simplicity of the dress contrasted with Emily's natural beauty, her brown hair carefully arranged in a low bun, adorned with small porcelain flowers. The path to the church was decorated with white flowers and satin ribbons. Emily observed, through the car window, the familiar streets of the neighborhood where she had grown up, her heart beating rapidly with the anticipation of meeting Richard, her fiancé, since she was 16. The old church, with its imposing towers, was packed. Family members, friends, and curious onlookers occupied all the dark wooden pews. The buzz of conversations ceased when the wedding march began to play. Emily took a deep breath, held her father's arm, and began her walk down the center aisle. The first steps were taken with confidence, but something was wrong. Richard was not at the altar. In his place, the priest held a white envelope with a worried expression. Whispers began to spread through the church like a cold wind. "Where is the groom?" someone whispered. Emily continued walking, her smile faltering with each step. Her father gently squeezed her arm, trying to convey strength. When they reached the altar, the priest handed the envelope to Emily with trembling hands. The silence in the church was deafening as she opened the letter. The handwritten words, in a handwriting she knew so well, began to dance before her eyes. "Forgive me, Emily. I cannot marry you. Natalie is expecting my child. We have left together to build our life." The world seemed to slow down. Emily heard the distant sound of cell phones being pulled from purses, flashes going off, muffled laughter. Her best friend and her fiancé, a child. The double betrayal hit her like a slap. Her knees weakened, but before she could fall, an imposing presence appeared beside her. A tall man in an impeccable suit covered her shoulders with his jacket in a protective gesture. Emily didn't know him, but there was something in his green eyes that conveyed security. "Allow me to get you out of here, miss," he said quietly, just for her to hear. His voice was deep and gentle, as if he understood exactly the pain she was feeling. The man made a discreet gesture, and 2 security guards appeared, clearing a path through the crowd that was now photographing and filming the scene. Emily allowed herself to be guided out of the church, protected by the stranger's jacket and the firm presence of her parents, who followed closely behind. A black limousine waited at the entrance. The man opened the door for Emily and her parents. "My name is Ethan Montgomery," he introduced himself as he entered the vehicle. "I own the Montgomery Group and would like to offer my residence as a refuge until this situation calms down." Emily looked out the window as the limousine moved away from the church. The Gothic towers were left behind, along with her girlhood dreams. Silent tears ran down her face, but there was something different in her crying. It wasn't just sadness, but also relief, as if somehow the universe had saved her from a much worse fate. The Montgomery mansion appeared imposing after the wrought iron gates opened. Emily observed, still stunned, the meticulously maintained gardens that extended as far as the eye could see. Marble fountains decorated the path to the main entrance, where a majestic staircase led to a solid oak door. The interior of the mansion was even more impressive. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the entrance hall, and valuable works of art decorated the walls covered with vintage wallpaper. A middle-aged housekeeper, introduced as Mrs. Rose, waited with a maternal expression. "I've prepared the blue room for the miss," said Mrs. Rose, leading Emily and her parents down the hallway. "It's the quietest in the house, with a view of the rose garden," Ethan Montgomery walked a few steps behind, observing in silence. There was something in his gaze that intrigued Emily, a mixture of protection and melancholy that she couldn't decipher. The blue room was a dream in pastel tones. A king-size canopy bed occupied the center of the room, and a private balcony opened to a breathtaking view of the gardens. Emily sat in a vintage armchair, still dressed as a bride, feeling out of place in that luxurious setting. "I brought some clothes that might fit," said Mrs. Rose, opening an antique wardrobe. "They belong to Mrs. Montgomery." Her voice hesitated slightly at mentioning the name. Ethan, who was observing from the door, had a brief flash of pain in his eyes. "My late wife would have been happy to help," he said, his voice carrying a contained sadness. Emily's parents, after much insistence from Ethan, agreed to spend the night in another room in the mansion. Mrs. Rose provided a light dinner, which was served in the blue room. Emily barely touched the food, lost in thoughts about how her life had completely changed in a matter of hours. Later, when night had fallen over the mansion's gardens, Ethan knocked softly at the door. He found Emily on the balcony, still wearing her wedding dress, watching the stars. "Sometimes the most painful moments in our lives are actually necessary detours," he said, joining her on the balcony. "I learned that the hard way." Emily looked at him with curiosity. "You seem to speak from personal experience." Ethan smiled sadly. "Yes, my wife, Isabel, also betrayed me. She left with my best friend, taking not only my heart, but also my young son." He paused, his eyes lost in the darkness of the garden. "Fate can be cruel, but it can also be surprisingly kind when we least expect it." A comfortable silence settled between them. Emily realized there was something familiar about this man, as if she already knew him from somewhere. "Why are you helping me, Mr. Montgomery?" "Ethan, please," he gently corrected. "And as for the reason, let's say I recognize a pure soul when I see one. I've observed your dedication in volunteer work at the municipal library, your kindness with children during reading sessions. You deserve much more than the humiliation you suffered today." Emily's eyes widened, surprised that he knew these details about her life. Before she could question further, Ethan continued, "I have a proposal for you. You don't need to answer now, but I would like you to consider it." He approached the balcony railing, his green eyes reflecting the moonlight. "In the next 3 months, I need to attend various important social events. I would like you to accompany me as my official companion. In exchange, I will ensure that you have the financial means to rebuild your life as you wish." The proposal hung in the air like an unfinished melody. Emily felt her heart race, not from fear, but from a strange expectation. There was something in Ethan's gaze that made her feel safe, protected, as if for the first time on that terrible day she could glimpse a future different from what she had planned. The days at the Montgomery mansion turned into weeks. Emily gradually began to emerge from the cocoon of sadness that surrounded her. Mrs. Rose became a constant and comforting presence, helping her discover a new version of herself. One morning, while having coffee on the winter garden veranda, Ethan surprised Emily with a series of elegant boxes. "They're gifts from Sophia Taylor, the most prestigious image consultant in the city," he explained. "She'll be coming this afternoon to meet you." Sophia arrived punctually at 2 in the afternoon, bringing with her a vibrant energy that seemed to illuminate every room she passed through. Tall, elegant, and with a welcoming smile, she immediately made Emily feel at ease. "Darling, you're a perfect blank canvas," said Sophia, circling around Emily with analytical eyes. "You have impressive natural beauty. We'll just enhance what's already there and add a touch of sophistication." The next few hours were dedicated to a complete transformation. Sophia taught Emily how to walk with elegance, how to carry herself at social events, how to choose the right clothes for each occasion. More than that, she helped her regain her self-esteem. "Remember," Sophia would say while adjusting a blue silk dress on Emily's body, "true elegance comes from within. It's how you carry yourself, how you treat people, how you maintain your dignity even in the most challenging situations." Ethan observed Emily's transformation with a mixture of admiration and something deeper that he himself couldn't define. During the dinners they shared, He began to notice how she absorbed each new piece of information with a genuine thirst for knowledge. "You have an impressive library," Emily commented one night, her eyes shining as she spoke of the books she had discovered on the ancient shelves. "I've never seen so many first editions gathered together." "They're all yours to explore," replied Ethan, surprised by her enthusiasm. "I have a special fondness for classic literature. I see that you do too." Emily blushed slightly. "Actually, I always dreamed of doing a master's in literature, but circumstances were—" "And why not now?" Ethan interrupted, an idea beginning to form in his mind. "Sometimes we need to lose something to gain something much greater." Ethan's words planted a seed of hope in Emily's heart. In the following days, between etiquette lessons with Sophia and long conversations with Ethan about literature, she began researching master's programs. The transformation wasn't just external. Emily felt different, inside, as if each day at the Montgomery mansion helped her discover a new facet of herself. The nights of crying were replaced by hours of reading in the library, where she and Ethan often lost themselves in discussions about classic authors. One afternoon, while Sophia was adjusting a black gala dress on Emily's body, the consultant made an observation that caught her by surprise. "You know, darling, in all my years of profession, I've never seen Mr. Montgomery so alive. There's something about you that awakens in him a light I thought had been extinguished a long time ago." Emily felt her heart race at the comment, but before she could respond, Ethan appeared at the closet door. Their eyes met through the mirror, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. "Are you ready for your first social event?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. "The Cultural Foundation's gala ball happens this weekend, and it will be your debut in society." Emily nodded, feeling a mixture of anxiety and expectation. The ball would be her first public appearance since the wedding disaster, and more than that, it would be the first time she would present herself as Ethan Montgomery's official companion. The Grand Palace Hotel ballroom sparkled under the light of thousands of crystals. Emily took a deep breath before getting out of the limousine, her hand resting gently on the arm offered by Ethan. The black dress, an exclusive creation chosen by Sophia, fit like a second skin, elegantly accentuating her silhouette. "Remember," whispered Ethan as they climbed the marble steps, "you are no longer that abandoned bride. Tonight you are Emily Montgomery, my official companion." The use of his surname alongside hers caused an unexpected shiver in Emily. There was something in the way Ethan presented her that made her feel truly special, as if she belonged to that world of luxury and refinement. As they entered the ballroom, the buzz of conversations momentarily diminished. All eyes turned to the couple. Ethan Montgomery, the reclusive and mysterious businessman, rarely attended social events since the scandal involving his ex-wife. And now there he was, accompanied by a stunning young woman whom nobody recognized. "Ethan, what a wonderful surprise!" exclaimed an elegant lady approaching. "And who is this charming young woman?" "Catherine, allow me to introduce Emily," replied Ethan with a courteous smile. "Emily, this is Catherine Waldorf, president of the Cultural Foundation." Emily smiled and greeted Catherine with the grace and elegance that Sophia had taught her. Soon, she was involved in a fascinating conversation about the Foundation's cultural projects, demonstrating a knowledge of literature that impressed everyone around. The night flowed like a dream until Emily heard a familiar voice. "I can't believe it. Is it really you?" Her blood froze as she recognized Richard, her ex-fiancé, standing a few feet away. Next to him, Natalie displayed a small pregnancy belly, looking uncomfortable in a dress that seemed too tight. Ethan, sensing the tension, moved even closer to Emily, his presence a silent fortress by her side. "Any problem?" he asked, his voice calm but loaded with authority. Richard seemed to shrink before Ethan's imposing presence. We just wanted to say hello," he stammered, noticing for the first time the power and influence that emanated from the man beside, his ex-fiancé. Emily raised her chin, a serene smile on her lips. "Richard, Natalie, what a surprise to find you here. I hope you're well." Her voice betrayed no emotion, only a studied politeness that made several nearby guests observe the scene with interest. "You look different," commented Natalie, her eyes scanning Emily's elegant dress and confident posture. "I am better," Emily replied simply. "Much better." Ethan chose that moment to guide her to the dance floor, where a waltz was beginning to play. His arms enveloped her with firmness, but also with surprising delicacy. "You were magnificent," he murmured in her ear as they danced. "You showed an elegance and dignity that they will never be able to achieve." Emily allowed herself to relax in Ethan's arms, letting herself be carried by the music. Suddenly, she realized that she no longer felt pain at seeing Richard and Natalie. In its place, there was only gratitude. Gratitude for the fate that had freed her from a loveless marriage and put her in the path of someone who really saw her for who she was. The waltz continued, and Emily noticed how the gazes of the guests followed them across the dance floor. There was something different in the way Ethan led her, as if each step was more than just a dance. Their gazes met, and for a moment, the rest of the world seemed to disappear. It was then that Emily felt it, that first tremor in her heart, that first spark of something deeper being born between them. And by the gleam in Ethan's eyes, she suspected she wasn't alone in this discovery. After the ball, the routine at the Montgomery mansion took on new contours. Emily noticed subtle changes in Ethan's behavior, longer looks, more frequent smiles, a closeness that went beyond the initial cordiality. During the mornings, she would often find him in the winter garden, always with a cup of coffee and a different book in hand. One such morning, while discussing Jane Austen, Mrs. Rose appeared with a worried expression. "Mr. Montgomery, I found this while cleaning the attic." In her hands, an old carved wooden box. Ethan's demeanor changed instantly. He took the box carefully, as if handling something precious and potentially dangerous. "Thank you, Rose. Can you leave us alone?" Emily watched as Ethan opened the box, with slightly trembling hands. Inside were old photographs, yellowed letters, and a small diary. "These are the memories of my marriage to Isabel," he explained, his voice laden with contained emotion. "You never told me exactly what happened," Emily said softly, sitting beside him. Ethan picked up one of the photographs. In it, a younger. Ethan smiled next to an elegant woman holding a baby. "Isabel was fascinating," he began. "We met at an art exhibition in New York. She was a curator, full of life and ambitions. We married after 6 months of an intense romance." He paused, his fingers caressing the edge of the photograph. "Michael, our son, was born a year later. They were the happiest moments of my life. Until..." His voice failed. "Until she left." Emily gently completed. "Yes, with Andrew, my best friend since college. He was our financial advisor, spent a lot of time in our home. I never suspected anything until the day I returned from a business trip and found only a note. She had taken Michael, who was only 3 years old at the time." Emily felt her heart tighten, seeing the pain in Ethan's eyes. "You never saw them again?" "Isabel died in a car accident in Switzerland 2 years later. Michael stayed with his maternal grandparents, who never allowed me to get close. He must be 15 now." Ethan put the photograph back in the box. "Since then, I've immersed myself in work and closed myself off from the world. Until I saw a young woman giving literature classes to underprivileged children. At the municipal library," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "You reminded me that genuine kindness still exists in the world, Emily. For months, I observed your dedication, your gentleness. When I learned of your wedding, I felt an inexplicable anguish." Emily processed every word, beginning to understand the puzzle that was Ethan Montgomery. "Is that why you were at the church that day?" "Yes. I couldn't bear the idea of seeing your light go out like mine went out. Richard didn't deserve you. I knew about his affairs, his gambling debts. I tried to discreetly alert your parents, but they were so enchanted with the idea of the wedding." A silence laden with revelations hung between them. Emily realized that their hands had found each other on top of the memory box, their fingers naturally intertwined. "Ethan," she began, her voice low but firm, "you didn't just save me from that humiliation. You gave me a new chance at life, to discover who I really am." He raised her hand to his lips, depositing a soft kiss on her fingers. "You saved me too, Emily. Each day with you in this house has brought back colors that I thought I would never." See again. The moment was interrupted by Sophia, who arrived for another consulting session. But something had definitely changed between them. The invisible barriers that separated them began to crumble, revealing feelings that went far beyond the initial agreement they had established. That night, during dinner, Ethan made an announcement that caught Emily by surprise. "I received an invitation for the inauguration of the new wing of the Opera House. It will be an international event with European royalty in attendance. I would like you to be my special day companion." The way he emphasized the word special made Emily's heart race. There was a veiled promise in his eyes, an invitation to something much greater than just another social event. The city opera house gleamed in its restored glory. Century-old chandeliers shone over the elegant crowd arriving for the inauguration of the new wing. Emily stepped out of the limousine wearing a stunning red dress, an exclusive creation that Sophia had commissioned especially for the occasion. Ethan, impeccable in his tuxedo, couldn't take his eyes off her. Since the conversation about his past, something had changed between them. There was a silent intimacy, a mutual understanding that transcended words. "Are you nervous?" he asked as they climbed the marble staircase. "A little," Emily admitted, "but it's different now. I feel prepared." The main foyer was filled with international personalities, ambassadors, famous artists, and members of European royalty mingled in animated conversations. Emily was surprised to find that she recognized many of them from the etiquette and art history lessons with Sophia. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the master of ceremonies, "the presentation will begin in 15 minutes. Please proceed to your seats." Ethan led Emily to the main box, a privileged position that offered a perfect view of the stage. As they settled in, she noticed something different in his behavior, a subtle tension, as if he were about to make an important decision. The lights dimmed, and the first chords of La Traviata filled the theater. Emily was mesmerized by the performance when she felt Ethan's hand seek hers in the dimness of the box. The touch was gentle, almost hesitant. "Emily," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the music, "I need to tell you something." She turned to him, her heart racing as she met his intense green eyes in the half-light of the box. "These months with you have changed everything. I can no longer imagine my life without your presence, without our conversations, without your smile in the morning in the library." Emily felt her breath falter. Ethan continued, his voice laden with emotion. "I know our initial agreement was just for 3 months, with no personal involvement, but it happens that my heart didn't receive that memo." A contained sob from the protagonist on stage echoed through the theater, underlining the moment of vulnerability between them. Emily realized that silent tears were streaming down her face. "Ethan, don't say anything yet," he gently asked, wiping a tear from her face with his thumb. "There's something I need to show you first." From the inner pocket of his tuxedo, Ethan pulled out a golden envelope. "It's your acceptance letter for the Masters in Literature at Harvard. It arrived this morning." Emily took the envelope with trembling hands. "How did you—" "I saw your eyes light up when you talked about this dream. I contacted the university, provided letters of recommendation. The rest was all your merit, your knowledge, your passion for literature." The opera reached its crescendo as Emily absorbed the news. It was her dream coming true, but why did she feel a twinge of sadness? "I don't want you to give up your dreams for me," continued Ethan. "If you accept the position, and I sincerely hope you do, I want you to go to Cambridge, knowing you have a heart here waiting for you. A heart that, after years frozen, started beating again because of you." Emily looked at the envelope in her hands, then at Ethan. The music reached its apex on stage, reflecting the storm of emotions in her chest. "What if I don't want to go?" she whispered. "Then you would be making the same mistake I made years ago, letting fear prevent your dreams. You are young, brilliant, have a whole world to conquer. And I will be here, waiting, because for the first time in years, I've found something worth waiting for." The last notes of the opera echoed through the theater, followed by an explosion of applause. But in the main box, the real drama was just beginning. Emily held in her hands not just an acceptance letter, but also her heart divided between nascent love and the dream of a lifetime. The days that followed the night at the opera were filled with contradictory emotions at the Montgomery mansion. Emily spent hours in the library, torn between studying for Harvard and contemplating her decision. The deadline to respond to the university was approaching, and each minute seemed to weigh like lead on her heart. Ethan, true to his word, maintained a respectful distance, although his look said more than 1,000 words. During shared breakfasts, their hands occasionally brushed as they reached for the same object, sending electric currents through their bodies. "Have you decided?" asked Mrs. Rose one afternoon, while helping Emily organize her clothes. The housekeeper had become a precious confidant in recent months. "My heart is at war, Rose," confessed Emily, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Since I was little, I've dreamed of studying literature at a prestigious university. But now your heart has found another dream," completed Rose with an understanding smile. "You know, I've worked in this house for 20 years. I saw Mr. Ethan in his darkest moments, after Isabel's departure. I never thought I would see that sparkle return to his eyes." Emily picked up one of the books from the pile on her desk, a first edition of Wuthering Heights that Ethan had given her. Inside, a dedication written in his elegant handwriting. "To Emily, who, like Catherine, has the strength to transform storms into calm seas." "This morning I found this under my door," said Emily, removing an envelope from inside the book. Inside was a first-class ticket to Boston and a delicate gold locket. Rose took the locket carefully. It was an antique piece, clearly a family jewel. This locket belonged to Mr. Ethan's mother. He always said he would only give it to someone who truly mattered. At that moment, Sophia entered the room, carrying several bags. "Darling, I brought your dress for tonight's charity dinner. Ethan insisted it should be special." Emily had almost forgotten about the event. It would be her last social commitment before the deadline to respond to the university. When Sophia revealed the dress, a stunning midnight blue model with silver details, Emily felt her heart tighten. It was exactly like the dress she had described to Ethan during one of their conversations about her ideal fairy tale. "He asked that it be made especially for you," explained Sophia, helping her try it on. "Each detail was thought out following your preferences." As she looked at herself in the mirror, Emily realized it wasn't just a dress, it was a silent declaration of love. Ethan had paid attention to every little detail she mentioned, every dream she shared. "Tonight's dinner will be in the Winter Garden," informed Rose. Ethan spent the day personally supervising every detail of the decoration. As the sun set, Emily prepared with special care. The locket rested on her neck, shining softly against the fabric of the dress. Her hands trembled slightly as Sophia gave the finishing touches to her hair. "Emily," called Sophia, her tone more serious than usual. "In all my years as a consultant, I've learned to recognize when two people are made for each other. What you and Ethan have is rare. Don't let fear prevent you from being happy." When Emily descended the stairs toward the Winter Garden, her heart was beating wildly. What would she find there? How could she choose between two equally precious dreams? The locket around her neck seemed to pulse with the weight of the decision she needed to make. The Winter Garden was transformed. Thousands of tiny lights twinkled among the foliage, creating a magical atmosphere. Elegant tables arranged in a semicircle surrounded a small dance floor, and in the center a crystal fountain murmured softly. Ethan waited at the foot of the stairs, impeccable in his dark suit. His gaze as he watched Emily descend the stairs was one of pure admiration. "You look stunning," he said, offering his arm. "The locket looks perfect on you." The guests were already arriving, important personalities from society, all there to support the new children's wing of the hospital that the Montgomery group was building. Emily noticed that unlike other events, this one seemed more intimate, more personal. "Ethan," called a familiar voice. It was Catherine Waldorf from the Cultural Foundation, accompanied by an elegant, grey-haired gentleman. "I want to introduce you to Professor Alexander Williams, director of the literature program at Harvard University." Emily felt her heart skip a beat. Ethan gently squeezed her hand, conveying reassurance. "Miss Emily," said Professor Williams with a warm smile, "it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Your research proposal on female literature of the 19th century is fascinating. We rarely see so much potential in such a young candidate." During dinner, Emily found herself involved in a passionate discussion with the professor about Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters. Ethan observed her with a mixture of pride and melancholy, sipping his wine in silence. "You know," commented Professor Williams between courses, "we have a special exchange program with other American and European universities. Our students can spend a semester in New York, London, or even return home for field research." Emily realized what Ethan had done. He wasn't just supporting her dream, he was building bridges so that she could realize all of them without having to choose between love and career. After dinner, when the music began to play, Ethan led her to the dance floor. The soft notes of La Vie en Rose filled the air as they moved in perfect harmony. "Why is Professor Williams here?" Emily asked softly. "Because I wanted you to understand something," replied Ethan, his green eyes fixed on hers. "True love doesn't confine, it liberates. I don't want you to choose between your dreams and what's growing between us. I want you to have everything." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "But what if I leave? What if... If you leave, I'll be here." He gently interrupted. "Cambridge isn't so far away. There are daily flights, video calls, and I have contacts in Massachusetts who can help you with anything you need. More importantly, you have this locket." His fingers brushed the jewel on Emily's neck. "It was my mother's. She once told me that true love is like this jewel. It can cross generations, oceans, and still keep its shine intact." The music was coming to an end, but they continued dancing, lost in their own world. The guests watched the couple with knowing smiles. It was impossible not to notice the love that radiated from them. "Ethan," whispered Emily, "I'm afraid. Not of leaving, but that all this is a dream from which I'll wake up." He smiled, that smile that made her heart melt. "Then let's make it real. Accept the position at Harvard. Chase your dreams, and allow me to be part of that journey, even from a distance." The night advanced, and under the stars that shone through the glass roof of the winter garden, Emily finally understood that sometimes fate presents us not with choices, but with possibilities. And there, in Ethan's arms, all possibilities seemed wonderful. The international airport was busy that September morning. Emily, dressed with discreet elegance, another of the lessons learned from Sophia, was waiting to board for Boston. Ethan was by her side, his strong and silent presence conveying the security she so needed at that moment. "Are you sure you don't want me to go with you?" he asked for the third time, gently holding her hand. "I can perfectly well postpone some meetings." Emily smiled, touching the locket on her neck. "I need to do this alone, Ethan. I know you understand." He nodded, his green eyes shining with a mixture of pride and anticipated longing. Mrs. Rose had insisted on coming to say goodbye too, and now she handed Emily a small basket of homemade cookies. "For when you miss home," said the housekeeper, trying to disguise her tears. "And don't forget to check that special box I put in your suitcase." Sophia, who had helped with all the logistics of the move, including an appropriate wardrobe for all 4 American seasons, gave the final recommendations. "Remember what we discussed about American etiquette, and don't hesitate to call me if you need guidance." The boarding announcement echoed over the loudspeakers. It was time. Emily felt her heart tighten. "Ethan, He silenced her with a soft kiss, the first they shared in public. "It's going to be incredible," he whispered against her lips. "You're going to conquer Harvard just like you conquered my heart." Emily boarded with misty eyes, but her heart full of hope. When the plane took off, she opened her handbag and found an envelope that wasn't there before. Ethan's elegant handwriting was unmistakable, to read only when you're in the air. Inside was a letter. "My dear Emily, as you read these words, you are literally flying toward your dreams. I couldn't be more proud. You have transformed my life in ways I never imagined possible. From an abandoned bride, you have become a strong, independent woman and even more extraordinary than you already were. I know you're scared. Changes are always scary. But remember, You have the world at your feet and a heart that beats for you on the other side of the continent. The apartment I rented for you is close to the university. It's small, but has a built-in library that I made sure to equip with some American classics. The housekeeper, Mrs. Sullivan, is trustworthy and is already instructed to help you with everything you need. But most importantly, in the box that Rose put in your suitcase, you will find a special gift. It's a diary that belonged to my grandmother. She also went to study in Boston when she was young, leaving behind a love she thought impossible. In the pages yellowed by time, you will find a story of courage, perseverance, and a love that overcame distance. The difference is that we have technology in our favor. I promise to be present in each of your achievements, even if virtually. And on weekends, well, Boston isn't so far from New York. Take my heart with you, along with that locket. And remember, sometimes we need to move away to discover how close we can become. With all my love, Ethan. Emily held the letter to her chest, silent tears streaming down her face. The flight attendant passing by offered a tissue with an understanding smile. When the plane broke through a layer of clouds, Emily saw the sun shining strongly through the window. It was as if the universe was sending a signal. New beginnings. Could be scary, but they could also be extraordinarily beautiful. She took out her phone and opened the last message from Ethan, a photo of the winter garden of the Montgomery mansion, with the caption, "Your special place will be waiting for you." In the background, she could see the fountain where they had danced for the first time, now decorated with orchids, her favorite flowers. The flight would be long, but Emily didn't feel alone. She carried with her not only dreams and hopes, but also the certainty of a love that, like the locket around her neck, had crossed generations to find her. Boston welcomed Emily with a golden autumn. The old streets of the city exuded history, and romance, and her small apartment in Cambridge was exactly as Ethan had described, cozy and full of personality. Mrs. Sullivan, an American lady with grey hair and a warm smile, awaited her with an authentic New England clam chowder. "Welcome, Miss Emily. Mr. Montgomery has told me so much about you." While unpacking, Emily found the box mentioned by Rose. Inside, besides the diary promised by Ethan, there was a professional camera with a note to record every moment of this new adventure. With love, E. The first weeks at the university were intense. Professor Williams had organized a special study group where Emily soon stood out for her insightful analyses of romantic literature. Between classes and assignments, she maintained daily contact with Ethan through video calls. "How was your presentation today?" he asked one night, his face on the computer screen conveying that look of admiration she loved so much. "Amazing. Professor Williams loved my analysis of Mary Shelley's influence on Gothic literature," replied Emily, excited. "But I miss our discussions in the library." "Me too," smiled Ethan. "The winter garden isn't the same without you." It was during one of these conversations that Emily met Mark, an American colleague in the master's program. Tall, charming, and passionate about literature, he began to approach her with an interest that went beyond the academic. "Emily, you need to experience the real Boston," insisted Mark after a class. "How about coffee at Quincy Market? I can show you places tourists don't know about." She hesitated, instinctively touching the locket. "Sorry, Mark, but I have plans today. Ethan is coming to visit me this weekend." Mark's smile faltered slightly. "Ah, yes, your guardian from New York. You know, interesting stories circulate about him in the business world. They say his fortune has questionable origins." Emily felt her blood boil. "I don't believe in gossip, Mark. I know Ethan's character." "Really? How long have you actually known him? Sometimes people aren't who they seem to be." Mark's words planted a seed of unease in Emily. That night, while rereading Ethan's grandmother's diary, she found a passage that caught her attention. "True love needs no proofs or explanations. It simply is, pure and transparent as the finest crystal. Those who try to tarnish it with doubts are the same ones who have never known its true strength." On Friday, when Ethan arrived at Logan Airport, all doubts dissipated. He was even more handsome than she remembered, carrying a bouquet of orchids and a smile that lit up the entire arrivals hall. "Welcome to Boston," she said, running into his arms. "Welcome home," he replied, wrapping her in a tight embrace, "because home is where you are." As they walked hand in hand through the old streets of Boston, Emily realized that some love stories are like the city's great works of art. They need time and dedication to be built, but once ready, they become eternal. On the terrace of her apartment under the American stars, Ethan surprised her with a blue velvet box. Inside, a pair of sapphire earrings that perfectly matched the locket, to remind you that even separated by a continent, our hearts beat to the same rhythm, he said, gently placing the earrings in her ears. Emily smiled, tears of happiness shining in her eyes. "You know what I discovered reading your grandmother's diary? That sometimes we need to leave to be sure of where we truly belong." The Boston winter painted the city with shades of gray and white, but Emily's small apartment was a cozy refuge against the cold. The walls of the library were already decorated with photos of her moments with Ethan, shared smiles at Quincy Market, embraces at the Boston Common, stolen kisses in the gardens of the MFA during a weekend in town. That morning, while organizing her notes for class, Emily received an unexpected message from Sophia. "Darling, I need to tell you something important. Can you make a video call now?" Sophia's normally serene face looked worried on the computer screen. "Emily, something is happening. Richard and Natalie are spreading rumors about Ethan in the local press." "What kind of rumors?" asked Emily, feeling her heart tighten. "They're insinuating that Ethan deliberately sabotaged Richard's business, that he has questionable connections. Natalie is giving interviews, saying that you and Ethan planned everything from the beginning, including the cancellation of the wedding." Emily felt her blood freeze. Mark's words about the questionable origins of Ethan's fortune echoed in her mind. "But that's absurd. Ethan didn't even know me before that day." "We know that, darling. But the press loves a scandal. Ethan is trying to protect you, keeping everything away from the Boston papers. But..." At that moment, a notification appeared on Emily's phone. It was Mark sharing a link to a New York newspaper. The headline made her stomach turn. "Mysterious businessman. The hidden truths of the Montgomery Empire." Hands trembling, Emily opened the article. It was a sensationalist piece, full of insinuations about how Ethan had systematically destroyed his competitors over the years. Richard appeared as the main source, claiming to have evidence of illicit activities. "Sophia, I need to return to New York," declared Emily, her voice firm despite the fear. "No, darling. That's exactly what they want. Ethan is taking care of everything. He asked me to let you know that he's on his way to Boston." After ending the call, Emily found several messages from Mark. "See? I tried to warn you. We need to talk. I have more information. Meet me at the University Cafe in an hour." Emily hesitated, her finger hovering over the messages. On one hand, she wanted to defend Ethan tooth and nail. On the other, a small voice in her head questioned, how much did she really know about his past? Determined to face the doubts head-on, she agreed to meet Mark. The cafe was almost empty. When she arrived, just a few students fighting the cold with steaming cups of cappuccino. Mark was already waiting for her at a discreet table in the back. "Emily, I'm sorry you had to find out this way," he began, his voice laden with false concern. "But I have more information you need to see." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were old newspaper clippings about mysterious bankruptcies, of companies competing with the Montgomery Group, photos of Ethan in meetings with people of dubious reputation, documents suggesting suspicious transactions. "How did you get all this?" asked Emily, her voice trembling. Mark hesitated for a moment. "I have contacts in the journalistic world, and there's more. I discovered that Ethan knew about you long before your wedding day. He had been following your steps for answer." The locket on Emily's neck seemed to weigh a ton. She remembered Ethan's words. "For months I observed your dedication, your kindness. Why are you showing me this, Mark?" "Because I care about you, Emily. A lot." He extended his hand across the table, trying to touch hers, but Emily pulled back. At that moment, her phone vibrated with a message from Ethan. "Just landed at Logan. We need to talk." There are things you need to know, but I want you to hear them from me, not from strangers with their own agendas." Emily abruptly stood up, gathering her things. "Thank you for your concern, Mark, but I need to go." "Emily, wait! He's manipulating you, don't you see?" She stopped at the cafe door, turning to face him. "The only person trying to manipulate me here is you, and you know what the difference is between you and Ethan? He always gave me the freedom to make my own choices." As she quickly walked through the icy streets of Boston, Emily felt her heart in turmoil. She needed to hear the truth from Ethan's mouth, look into his eyes, and trust her own heart to recognize the truth. Snow was falling softly on Boston when Emily arrived at her apartment. Ethan was already waiting at the entrance of the building, white flakes dotting his dark coat. His green eyes, normally so confident, carried a vulnerability she had never seen before. "Can we talk upstairs?" he asked softly. Mrs. Sullivan, who was passing through the hall at that moment, gave them a maternal look before discreetly disappearing through the back door. In the apartment, silence weighed between them. Emily took off her snow-covered coat and instinctively touched the locket, seeking courage. Ethan remained near the window, observing the snow-covered city. "You saw the news," he said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes." "And Mark showed me a folder full of clippings and documents about you." Ethan turned to face her, his expression serious. "Mark, your master's colleague? He seems to know a lot about you, about us." "I imagine he does," replied Ethan, a sad smile playing on his lips. "Considering that he's Andrew's nephew, the man who ran away with my ex-wife." Emily felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. "What?" "I discovered a few weeks ago when I started investigating who was behind these stories in the press. Mark Wilson, son of Maria Wilson, Andrew's sister. He enrolled in the master's program specifically to get close to you." Emily sat down on the sofa, her mind processing the revelation. "So all these accusations are part of an elaborate revenge," completed Ethan, sitting beside her. "But before you ask, yes, some of the stories have a grain of truth. I really did observe you before that day in the church. And yes, I knew about Richard's debts, about his extramarital affairs." He took her hands in his touch gentle as always. "When I saw you for the first time at the municipal library, reading stories to underprivileged children, something in me awakened. I began to frequent the same places, observing from a distance your kindness, your light. When I discovered about your engagement to Richard, I made a point of investigating him. Why? Because I couldn't bear to see another pure soul be destroyed by someone unworthy. Richard was drowning in gambling debts, had affairs with several women, including Natalie. I could have interfered, told you everything, but you wanted me to discover it for myself," completed Emily, beginning to understand. "Exactly. You needed to make your own choices. So, yes, I was at the church that day, prepared to help you. But I never planned or caused what happened. I was just ready to be your safe harbor when the storm arrived." Emily stood up, walking to the shelf where she kept Ethan's grandmother's diary. "And what about the other accusations? About how you destroyed your competitors?" Ethan sighed deeply. "In business, I've always been relentless with corruption and dishonesty. When I discovered illegal practices in competing companies, I didn't hesitate to use legal means to expose them. Many went bankrupt, yes, but not because of sabotage, because of their own questionable actions." "How can I be sure?" Ethan stood up, joining her near the shelf. "Open the diary to the last page." Emily obeyed. An old envelope fell from between the yellowed pages. Inside was a letter addressed to her, handwritten by Ethan months before. "Emily, if you're reading this, it means the shadows of my past have finally caught up with us. When I fell in love with you, I promised myself I would always be honest. Every document that proves the legality of my business is kept in the main safe of the Montgomery Group. The password, the date we met at the church. Because even before you officially entered my life, that day was already marked in my heart as the beginning of something extraordinary. With eternal love, Ethan." Emily felt tears rolling down her face. Ethan gently wiped them away with his thumbs. "I never asked you to blindly trust me," he said. "I only ask that you trust what your heart says when we're together." In that moment, looking into the eyes of the man who had transformed her life, Emily knew. All the evidence in the world couldn't change what her heart already knew, that true love, like the locket she carried, was made to withstand any storm. Spring arrived in Boston, bringing with it not just flowers, but also renewal. After the revelations about Mark, Emily immersed herself even more in her studies, transforming all that experience into material for her thesis on female protagonists who find strength through adversity. Professor Williams was impressed with the new depth she brought to class discussions. "Your analysis of how Jane Eyre and Elizabeth Bennet face social conventions has a unique perspective, Miss Emily. It seems personal." At home, the small apartment in Cambridge had transformed into a true refuge. Mrs. Sullivan, who was now practically a second mother to Emily, filled the house with the aroma of typical American dishes and stories about her own youth. "You know, child," she said one afternoon, as they prepared a lasagna together, "when love is true, it survives any storm. My George, God rest his soul, faced his entire family to marry me. They said he, a respected doctor, couldn't marry a simple baker's daughter." Emily smiled, thinking about how her own story with Ethan defied expectations. His visits to Boston had become more frequent since the incident with Mark. Each time he arrived, he brought not only gifts but also news about how he was dealing with the false accusations. "I found Isabel's son," he revealed during a candlelit dinner on the balcony. "Michael is 16 now. After all this story came to light, he sought me out himself, wanting to know the truth." "And how was it?" asked Emily, intertwining her fingers with his across the table. "Intense, emotional. He's an amazing kid, you know. Plays piano like his mother but has my eyes. He wants to meet you on the next holiday." The news caught Emily by surprise. "Me? But are you sure?" Ethan smiled, that smile that always made her heart melt. "He's the one who asked. Said he wants to meet the woman who brought happiness back to his father." The following weeks were of intense academic work for Emily. Her thesis was taking shape, and Professor Williams suggested she present part of her research at an important literature conference in Chicago. "It will be a unique opportunity," he explained. "Publishers, academics, renowned writers, they'll all be there." Preparation for the conference consumed her mornings and afternoons. At night, during video calls with Ethan, she shared her fears and expectations. "What if I'm not up to it?" she asked one night while reviewing her notes for the 1,000th time. "Emily," Ethan's voice was soft but firm through the screen, "you faced public humiliation and transformed that experience into strength. You overcame conspiracies and attempts at manipulation without losing your essence. Your thesis about women who find power through adversity isn't just academic research, it's your own testimony." Sophia, who had flown to Boston especially to help her prepare for the conference, agreed. "You're no longer that insecure girl I met," she said, while adjusting an elegant emerald green tailored suit. "You're a woman who knows her worth." On the eve of the presentation, a huge bouquet of orchids arrived at the apartment. The card simply said, "To the woman who taught me that true love isn't a prison but freedom. I'll be in the front row tomorrow with love, E." That night, alone in her room, Emily opened Ethan's grandmother's diary once more. One passage in particular caught her attention. "True rebirth doesn't happen in spring, but in the heart. It's when we learn that each challenge, each pain, each moment of doubt serves only to make us stronger, more true, more ourselves." Touching the locket around her neck, Emily smiled at her reflection in the mirror. Tomorrow she would face an audience of experts to defend her thesis. But unlike that day in the church almost a year ago, she wouldn't be alone. She had Ethan's love, the support of true friends, and most importantly, she had herself, stronger and more confident than ever. The main hall of the Grand Chicago Hotel was packed. Emily, in her emerald green suit, waited backstage for her moment of presentation. Through the curtain, she could see Ethan in the front row, elegant as always in his Italian suit, conversing with Professor Williams. 5 minutes, miss," advised one of the organizers. Emily took a deep breath, mentally reviewing her arguments. Her presentation, Silent Heroines, Female Strength in 19th Century Literature, was more than an academic analysis. It was a reflection of her own journey. Professor Williams took the stage to make his introduction. "It is with great pleasure that I present one of the most promising voices of the new generation of literature researchers. Her unique perspective on classic heroines has revolutionized our understanding of traditional texts." When Emily took her place at the podium, the first thing she saw was Ethan's encouraging smile. Next to him, to her surprise, was a teenager with green eyes identical to his, Michael. "The literature of the 19th century," she began, her voice, firm and clear, presented us with heroines who, even limited by their social circumstances, found ways to exercise their power and affirm their individuality. As she developed her arguments, Emily realized she had the audience completely engaged. Her analyses of Jane Eyre, Elizabeth Bennet, and other protagonists resonated in a special way with the audience. "These women," she continued, "are heroines, not just for facing adversities, but for maintaining their essence even when the world tries to mold them into something they are not. Their true strength is not in winning external battles, but in remaining true to themselves." At the end of the presentation, the auditorium erupted in enthusiastic applause. Professor Williams was the first to stand, followed by the entire audience. Emily saw tears of pride in Ethan's eyes. During the question session, a renowned London publisher expressed interest in turning her thesis into a book. "Your perspective is unique," she said. "It brings a contemporary sensibility to classic literature without losing academic depth." After the presentation, while receiving congratulations from those present, Michael approached shyly. "Hi," he said. I loved your lecture, especially the part about how appearances can be deceiving and how sometimes we need to lose something to find something better." Emily felt her heart melt. The boy was the image of his father, with the same intensity in his gaze. "Thank you, Michael. That means a lot to me." Ethan approached, enveloping both in a hug. "How about we celebrate with a typical Chicago dinner? I know a perfect place with a view of Lake Michigan." The restaurant was a charming and reserved place with a terrace covered by vines. Michael, initially shy, soon opened up, sharing stories about his life in Switzerland and his dreams of studying music. "Dad," he said at one point, "why did you never look for me before?" Ethan took his son's hand across the table. "Because your mother and your grandparents made it clear they didn't want me in your life. I respected that, even though it hurt, because sometimes loving means knowing how to wait." "Like you waited for Emily?" asked Michael with a mischievous smile. Ethan laughed, looking lovingly at Emily. "Yes, exactly like that." The dinner extended into the night, the lights of Chicago twinkling over Lake Michigan like liquid stars. Emily observed father and son interacting, realizing how fate had mysterious ways of fixing what was broken. Later, when Michael had already retired to the hotel, Ethan and Emily walked hand along Navy Pier. "I knew you would be incredible today," he said, stopping in the middle of the historic pier. "You have the gift of transforming pain into beauty, challenges into strength." "I learned from the best," she replied, adjusting the locket she never took off her neck. "You taught me that sometimes the most beautiful endings begin with a broken heart." Ethan pulled her close, the scent of jasmine from nearby gardens enveloping them like a caress. "And you taught me that some hearts need to be broken in order to fully open themselves to true love." The success of Emily at the Chicago conference reverberated throughout the academic world. Invitations for lectures began to arrive, and the London publisher was increasingly interested in publishing her work. However, not everything was rosy in the American spring. One morning, while having coffee with Mrs. Sullivan, Emily received an urgent call from Sophia. "Darling, we need to talk." The consultant's voice sounded tense. "Richard and Mark are planning something big. I just discovered that they've scheduled a press conference in New York for tomorrow." Emily felt her stomach turn. What kind of press conference? "They claim to have definitive evidence against Ethan. Documents, witnesses, everything. They're promising to reveal the true face of the Montgomery Empire. At that moment, a notification popped up on Emily's phone. It was an email from Professor Williams. "Miss Emily, we need to talk urgently. I've received some concerning information about your situation." The professor's office was silent when Emily arrived. Williams received her with a grave expression, a brown envelope on his desk. "Emily," he began, using her first name for the first time, "I received this morning. These are documents suggesting that your admission to the program was influenced." "What do you mean?" "Someone is trying to insinuate that Mr. Montgomery used his influence to secure your place in the master's program. There are also allegations about plagiarism in your thesis." Emily felt her blood freeze. "But that's absurd. You yourself have guided my research from the beginning." "I know," replied Williams gently. "That's why I called you. I don't believe any of these accusations. Your work is brilliant and original, but I need you to be prepared. This could become public at any moment." Leaving the university, Emily immediately called Ethan. To her surprise, he was already on his way to Boston. "I received an interesting phone call today," he said, his voice conveying a calculated calm. "Andrew, the ex-best friend who ran away with Isabel, wants to meet me. Says he has information about who is really behind all this." "Couldn't it be a trap?" "Probably is, but sometimes we need to face the shadows to leave them behind once and for all." When Ethan arrived at the apartment that night, he brought with him a folder similar to the one Mark had shown months before. "I found this in Isabel's old office," he explained, spreading the documents on the table. "These are records of suspicious transactions, but not from the Montgomery Group. They're from Andrew and Richard's company." Emily examined the papers carefully. "These numbers, they seem to indicate—" "Exactly. They were embezzling money for years. When I discovered it shortly before Isabel left, I began to discreetly investigate. That's why she ran away with Andrew, not for love, but to protect their scheme." "And Richard? How does he fit into this?" "He was the accountant who helped launder the money. When I started buying the companies they used in the scheme, their empire began to crumble. That's why he so desperately needed to marry you. Your family has an impeccable reputation in the financial market." Mrs. Sullivan entered silently, bringing a tray with tea and cookies. Her look was one of maternal concern. "What will we do now?" asked Emily, pouring 2 cups of tea. "Andrew set up a meeting for tomorrow at a cafe near Quincy Market. He wants to negotiate the real documents in exchange for our silence about the past." "I don't trust him," declared Emily, her instinct screaming in alert. Ethan smiled, that smile that always calmed her heart. "Neither do I. That's why I've already taken my precautions. Sophia is in New York with all the necessary documentation to expose their scheme. Michael is safe in Switzerland with a security team, and you—" "I'm going with you tomorrow," Emily firmly interrupted. "I won't let you face this alone." Ethan looked at her with admiration. "You're no longer that abandoned bride at the altar, are you?" "No," she replied, touching the locket. "I'm the woman you helped me discover within myself, and now it's my turn to fight for us." Night advanced over Boston, and as the city slept, 2 hearts planned to face the shadows of the past together. The locket on Emily's neck shone softly under the moonlight, as if also preparing for the battle that was to come. The morning dawned grey over Quincy Market. Emily and Ethan arrived early at the indicated cafe, choosing a table that offered a clear view of both the square and the entrance. Sophia had confirmed that everything was prepared in New York. At the slightest sign of trouble, she would release the documents to the press. "Nervous?" asked Ethan, noticing how Emily twirled the locket between her fingers. "A little," she admitted. "But I also felt ready." The cafe was beginning to fill with tourists and locals when Andrew arrived. The years hadn't been kind to him. His face was marked by worry lines and his eyes carried a visible weight. "Ethan," he greeted dryly, before turning to Emily with interest. "So this is the famous abandoned bride who won the heart of the great Montgomery." "Sit down, Andrew," said Ethan, his voice controlled. "You said you had something to tell us." Andrew pulled up a chair, his eyes never leaving Emily's face. You know, you remind me of Isabel when she was younger. Same determination in your gaze." "We're not here to talk about the past," Emily firmly interrupted. "What do you want?" Crooked smile appeared on Andrew's lips. "Straight to the point, I like that. Very well, I'm here because Richard and Mark have gone too far. They plan to use today's press conference to destroy not just Ethan, but you too, Emily." "What do you mean?" "They're going to present forged documents suggesting that you planned everything from the beginning. The failed wedding, your entry to the university, everything. They even have fake records of meetings between you months before the wedding." Ethan remained impassive, but Emily noticed how his fingers tensed around his coffee cup. "Why are you telling us this?" she asked. "Because I also have a son," replied Andrew, his mask of arrogance falling for a moment. "Michael. He's finally getting close to his father, building a relationship. I can't let them destroy that." "What do you suggest?" questioned Ethan. "I have the original documents that prove all the accusations are false. I also have evidence of Richard's illegal activities. I'll hand everything over to you on one condition." "Which is?" "That my name stays out of it. Not for my sake, but for Michael's. He's already suffered enough from our mistakes." Emily and Ethan exchanged a look. Through years of companionship, they had developed a silent communication that transcended words. "All right," agreed Ethan. "But we need the documents now. The press conference is in 3 hours." Andrew nodded, pulling a flash drive from his pocket. "It's all here, including a letter from Isabel. She wrote it before passing away. It explains everything, admits her guilt. I thought Michael should have this someday." Ethan took the flash drive carefully, as if holding something precious and potentially explosive at the same time. "There's one more thing," continued Andrew. "Richard isn't stable. When he realizes his plan has failed, I don't know what he's capable of." "We've already taken precautions," assured Emily. "Sophia is in New York with our own documentation, ready to act." A gleam of admiration appeared in Andrew's eyes. "You really aren't like Isabel, are you? She ran from problems. You faced them head-on." At that moment, Ethan's phone rang. It was Sophia. The press conference had been abruptly cancelled. Richard hadn't shown up, and Mark was unrecognizable on the phone. "What happened?" asked Emily. "It seems our counterattack worked," replied Ethan, a small smile forming on his lips. "Sophia released part of the documents to select journalists. Richard and Mark must have been alerted about the content." Andrew stood up, adjusting his suit. "My role here is done. Ethan, I'm sorry for everything." "It's not me you owe apologies to," replied Ethan. "It's your nephew, whom you used as a pawn in this dirty game." When Andrew left, Emily and Ethan remained at the cafe, observing the tourists photographing the historic market. "Is it over?" she asked softly. Ethan intertwined his fingers with hers across the table. "The bad part, yes, but our story, that's just beginning." The sun finally broke through the clouds, casting beams of light across the square. The locket on Emily's neck caught one of these rays, shining like a promise of better days to come. Summer arrived in Boston, bringing with it the closing of a cycle. Emily was making the final adjustments to her thesis, now enriched with a special chapter on how literature reflects social masks and the true faces of love. Professor Williams not only supported the new direction of the work, but encouraged her to transform it into a book. "Your personal story adds a unique dimension to the academic analysis," he commented during an advisory meeting. "You've lived in your own skin what these literary heroines experienced, the strength of remaining true to yourself in the face of adversity." The contract with the London publisher was signed, and the book launch was scheduled for the following winter. Sophia, who had become an even closer friend after recent events, was already planning a launch tour across the United States. "We need grand events," she insisted during a video call. "Your story isn't just about literature. It's about rebirth, about finding strength in true love." In New York, the repercussions of the revealed truth still echoed. Richard had disappeared after his illicit activities came to light, while Mark faced his own consequences at the university. Professor Williams had been inflexible upon discovering that he had tried to sabotage a colleague's work. Ethan, for his part, found his own kind of redemption. Isabel's letter, found among Andrew's documents, had touched on old wounds but also brought an unexpected type of healing. She admitted everything, he told Emily during a dinner at her apartment. Not just the financial schemes, but how she regretted using Michael as a pawn in her games. In the last lines, she asked me to seek him out when he was ready. And now he is, Emily softly completed, pouring more wine. Yes, Michael asked to spend the summer with us. He wants to know his American roots, get closer to the family he never had a chance to know. The news made Emily's heart leap. With us? Ethan smiled, that smile that still made her heart melt. Well, that leads me to an important question. Your master's is almost over. The book will be launched soon. Have you thought about what you want to do next? Emily played with the locket around her neck, a habit she had acquired in moments of reflection. I've received some offers. Harvard offered a position in the comparative literature department, and there's an invitation for a doctorate in New York. And what does your heart say? My heart? She looked out the window at the lights of Boston twinkling like earthly stars. My heart says that after so long seeking my place in the world, I finally understood that place isn't a point on the map. It's where we find true love. Ethan rose from his chair, approaching her with something hidden behind his back. Then perhaps it's the right time for this. He knelt, revealing a small blue velvet box. Inside, a sapphire ring that perfectly matched the locket. The same ring she had seen in an old photo in his grandmother's diary. This ring, explained Ethan, his voice choked with emotion, belonged to 3 generations of Montgomery women. Each one wrote her own story of true love. My grandmother received it in Venice, after waiting 7 years for her youthful love. My mother received it in Paris on a spring night. And now... Ethan. Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. Emily, you taught me that true love isn't just about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It's about choosing each other every day, about growing together, about transforming even pain into something beautiful. You returned to me not just the ability to love, but also the courage to be loved. He took her left hand delicately. This ring carries stories of love that have crossed generations. Would you like to write the next story with me? The Boston. Sun was already setting when Emily finally found her voice, choked with emotion. The sapphire ring sparkled in the velvet box, reflecting not just the twilight light, but all the love stories it carried. Yes, she answered, tears of happiness streaming down her face. 1,000 times yes. When Ethan slid the ring onto her finger, something extraordinary happened. The locket around her neck seemed to pulse with its own glow, as if the generations of Montgomery love were blessing that union. Mrs. Sullivan, who was obviously nearby coincidentally arranging flowers in the hallway, burst into the apartment with a bottle of champagne and her best apple pie. Finally, she exclaimed, hugging them both, true love always finds its way. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions and preparations. Sophia insisted on organizing not just 1, but 2 engagement parties, one in Boston and one in New York. We need to celebrate not just your love, but the victory of truth over lies, she declared. Michael was the first to receive the news through a video call. His smile lit up the screen. It's about time, Dad. Can I be the best man? Professor Williams, upon learning of the engagement, insisted on organizing a small celebration in the literature department. Your story, he said, raising a glass, is worthy of the best novels we study. The difference is that this one is real. On a quiet afternoon, while organizing the details of the move to New York, where they had decided to settle after the wedding, Emily found a new entry in Ethan's grandmother's diary. The handwriting was different, more current. Dear Emily, when I gave you this diary, I hoped it would help you find strength in difficult moments. Now it's my turn to add a few words to its pages. You have not only honored the love stories of the Montgomery family, you've written a new chapter, even more beautiful. You've shown that true love isn't just about finding the right person, but about becoming your best version alongside them. The ring you now carry on your left finger is more than a family jewel. It's a symbol that happy endings aren't just for books. They happen when two people choose to build them together, day by day. With love, Ethan. Emily closed the diary with a smile, observing how the ring and the locket shone in perfect harmony. Her journey had begun with a broken heart in a church, but it was ending with a heart overflowing with love in a city that had become her second home. The Boston sun was setting once more over the Cambridge apartment, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. In the winter garden of the Montgomery Mansion in New York, Ethan personally supervised the planting of new orchids, Emily's favorites. Soon that space would witness not just the beginning of their story, but also its continuation, because some love stories are like the great classics.